Okay, chapter 5 of your book. This one is all about highways and freeways. So now you've mastered how to drive in um, rural areas or small urban centers, residential roads, things like that. And now you're going up to higher speeds. If you want to follow along, it's on page 67 of your driver's guide. That's where chapter 5 starts. Okay, so I mentioned blind spots a little bit. So this is really key and important, especially when you're going at higher speeds. When you're on highways, vehicles can be coming up faster than you are. Say you're traveling at 90 on the highway and it's getting a little dark, but the guy beside you is doing 110. You looked in your mirror and he was way back there, and then you look again as you're about to move your car and all of a sudden he's beside you. That can definitely happen when you're on highways and traveling at higher speeds. So you always got to make sure you're paying attention to the drivers around you as you're driving, but really key important when you're about to do a lane change, being aware of those other vehicles and checking those blind spots are really important to avoid bumping into each other, into other vehicles. So this video will show you exactly what a blind spot looks like on your vehicle.
Drivers who scan well see potential dangers early enough to avoid crashes. Good scanning comes with experience. Unfortunately, inexperienced drivers tend to focus only on what's directly ahead of them. That's why this lesson is so important. A scanning routine will get your new driver to expand their area of focus so they can spot potential hazards. Remind your teen to adjust the mirrors every time they get behind the wheel. This will help maximize their area of visibility. During your practices in the parking lot, instruct your teen to practice the scanning routine recommended by their driving instructor. It may be a variation on this routine. Check your side mirror, check your rearview mirror, check your other side mirror, and then look up ahead in the direction the car is moving. It's important to feel comfortable with this routine before you and your teen venture out onto the road. Obviously, there aren't many potential hazards in an empty parking lot, so take this time to practice the scanning routine. Make sure it is well understood. While you are discussing scanning, it's also a great time to go over the concept of blind spots. Every vehicle has them to varying degrees. Blind spots are the areas to the sides of the vehicle that are not covered by any of the mirrors. The driver needs to physically turn their head to see something in their blind spot. Stress to your teen driver how vital it is to check their blind spot whenever they make a lateral move, change lanes, turn onto another road, or into a parking space. Also mention that it's important not to linger in anyone's blind spot too long when the new driver gets out on the road. It takes practice to get used to scanning. One thing you should watch for is that your teen driver doesn't turn the steering wheel as they turn their head to scan. This is a common mistake of new drivers. With practice, your teen driver will excel at scanning and be ready to advance from the parking lot.
So as you can see, every vehicle will have a blind spot. Just depends on your vehicle, how big your mirrors are, things like that. So in order to check your blind spots, the only way to check your blind spot is through a shoulder check. And that's why it's essential to be doing your shoulder checks every single time you want to move your vehicle, whether it's doing a lane change, whether you're passing another car, or you're entering into a turn. It's really important to do that shoulder check to make sure there's nobody in your blind spot that you didn't see in the mirrors. First, the mirrors have to be adjusted correctly. So as we talked about right at the beginning this morning about your pre-car basics, it's really important to position your mirrors so that you can see the most out of them and eliminate or try to make your blind spot as small as possible. But you can't totally eliminate a blind spot. You're always still going to be a bit beside and behind you where there's a spot there where you just can't see through your mirrors. Remember, you don't need to see the side of your car. You can adjust your mirrors so that you just barely see the side of your vehicle in it, and most of the time you want to see as much of the road as possible in your mirrors. Also avoid, when you're doing your shoulder check, avoid turning your head all the way around. I mean, you don't want to like physically move your whole body around, because you still need to pay attention to what's going on in front of you. Especially if you're driving on a highway, you're still moving in front of you and you still need to be reacting to things that could pop up in front of you, like a truck throwing on their brakes or an animal jumping out. So shoulder check should be done very quickly. It's just a quick turn of your head for a split second, and then you're back facing forward again. Yeah, so shoulder checks can be dangerous because you're taking your eyes off the road ahead of you. Do them very quickly, and only when you really need to check that blind spot, but right before you're going to move your vehicle. To shoulder check properly, turn your head until your chin touches your shoulder or just above your shoulder, and it should be comfortable. You don't want to strain your neck all the way back. Glance to the side, and then in your eyes sight, in your view, there's your main point of vision, and then there's your peripheral vision. That's where you can see things on the side of you without looking directly at it. This is a situation where you definitely want to use your peripherals really quickly. You don't have eyes in the back of your head, so you can't see what's going on back there. So you're just going to look over your shoulder quickly, and you're going to use your peripherals to see as far back into that blind spot as possible. So as you can see, this particular vehicle, the blue parts is where his field of vision is. That's where he can see directly in front of him. And when he looks in his rear view or side view mirrors, he can see behind him and a little bit to the side of him as well. But in the red zone, that's his blind spots. So if there's a vehicle traveling beside him, or in this instance, a cyclist is traveling beside him, he can't see those vehicles or those road users and that cyclist. He can't see them. They're in their blind spot. So he could just be cruising along and he doesn't even realize that those vehicles are there. Maybe he was bumping to some music and he wasn't really paying attention, and all of a sudden there's these two other road users beside him, but he wasn't paying attention to them. He wasn't scanning, you know, he was kind of focused on some other things, and now there's some people in his blind spot. The other example in the middle, that is like a bigger truck. That's a heavy hauler truck and one with a trailer. So you can see his blind spots. He's got much greater blind spots because he's a bigger vehicle. He's lifted up off the ground right in front and to the right of him. That whole red zone there, he can't see that because he's so high up, he can't see the road directly in front of him through his big truck. Also, big trucks that have trailers, you can't see through that trailer cab. So even if he has a rear view mirror, he can't see behind him because his trailer is obstructing his view. So he's got a really big blind spot behind him. And then he's got bigger blind spots on the sides as well. So it's really important when you are traveling behind a larger truck, you want to stay out of that truck's blind spot. Because they can be moving and they need a lot of room to make their turns because they're so large, and their trailers could be way far behind them. They need a lot of room in advance to make that lane change safely. So help those drivers out because he's trying to pay attention to everything, but the best thing is to stay out of his blind spot. So even if you're behind a big truck like that, you don't want to be following too closely behind him because you're going to be in his blind spot. So what you want to do is follow far enough back behind that truck that you can see both of his mirrors. When you're looking ahead, you can see both of his mirrors on both sides of his truck. That's how you know you're far enough back. If you're closer and you can only see one mirror on the driver's side, you're still too close. You could be in his blind spot. The last example there is for the field of vision is that's a sports car, and he has his interior mirror, his right-hand mirror, but it could be a situation where his mirror isn't adjusted perfectly in the middle, so he hasn't optimized it to reduce his blind spot. Maybe his wife was driving the car earlier and she's a little smaller, and then he just jumped in the car right away and he didn't adjust his mirrors properly, so he has more blind spots than the driver in the first situation. The driver on the first example, he reduced his blind spots as much as possible, whereas here on the last example, number 3, his mirrors aren't centered totally center and properly. So he's got a couple more blind spots going on in his area. So mirrors are definitely key to reducing your blind spots, and shoulder checks are very key to checking your blind spot before you move your vehicle either into another lane or into a turn. Oh, so here's another video about lane changing, and especially thinking on highways when you guys are traveling at higher speeds.
Changing lanes is always dangerous, so it should only be done when necessary. To avoid making unnecessary lane changes, tell your new driver to stay in the appropriate lane. On 3-lane highways, stay in the middle lane. On 2-lane highways, stay in the right lane unless you need to move over to allow cars to enter the highway. Your teen must always know where the traffic is around them on the highway, especially when changing lanes. And it's important that you know as the parent that your teen is aware of the cars around them before you proceed. So have your teen look in the mirrors and identify the cars around them by color. When your teen correctly identifies the color of the cars, they're ready to start their lane change. Follow the same steps as in the intermediate road environment. First, you signal your intent to merge. Then you build up your speed to match the traffic. You check your mirrors and your blind spot. There should be one head check before a lane change. Side mirrors are important to gauge the speed of cars in other lanes. And when all conditions are right, you merge into a gap, leaving a large space cushion. If you made the lane change to pass another vehicle, be sure you see this vehicle in your rearview mirror before getting back into your lane. There are a few common errors you'll need to watch for when new drivers practice lane changes on highways. Teens may automatically take their foot off the gas when trying to change lanes. Remind them that it is important to stay ahead of traffic when changing lanes and never to cause other drivers to slow down. Teens may be nervous when first passing vehicles. They may even drift toward the vehicle they're passing. It may help to practice switching lanes without passing vehicles at first. New drivers may also hesitate when deciding to change lanes and miss their opportunities. That's okay. Wait until the next opportunity. Their confidence will grow. However, it is very important not to confuse the other drivers. New drivers may also come back into their lane too soon when passing another car. Tell your teen to make sure they can see the entire vehicle they passed in the rearview mirror before getting back into their lane. New drivers may focus too much on the cars in the lane beside them. They need to always be aware of the cars in front of them. You'll know when your new driver gets a grasp of lane changes on highways when they correctly judge distance necessary to pass, demonstrate appropriate lane changing and passing skills, and allow other vehicles to pass or change lanes safely by adjusting their space cushion, as we discussed in the intermediate roads.
Okay, so that showed how to pass other vehicles. So passing on a 2-lane highway is usually the easiest or safest because as you can see, this highway has the yellow line, which means traffic's moving in the same direction and it's divided. So you're not gonna have to cross into the path of oncoming traffic. These situations are usually not so bad. Just make sure that you're always making sure of the vehicles around you because you guys are all traveling in the same direction. And in this situation, the line's broken, so he's permitted to pass in this area. When you want to pass another vehicle on a 2-lane road, pass vehicles only when the way ahead is clear and when passing is permitted. Make sure that you have that broken yellow line. Shoulder check for vehicles to make sure they're not in your blind spot. Turn on your left signal, and then you must also be very mindful that even when you're passing somebody, you cannot exceed the speed limit. So you might see this often where road users, they want to pass really quickly in order to be safe. So they step on the gas and they end up doing 130, 140 when the speed limit's 100. That's still not allowed. You still need to be able to do your pass safely and not surpass the speed limit. So if you were caught by a police officer and he asks you, okay, why were you going so fast on the highway? And you say, well, I was trying to pass that guy. I didn't leave myself enough room, and so I had to speed up. That's not a good enough excuse. He's still gonna issue you a ticket, and you're still disobeying the law or breaking the law. You cannot exceed a speed limit even when you're passing. So really important to make sure you leave yourself enough room. Once the vehicle you've passed is visible in your inside rear view mirror. So don't just look on your side mirror and see them in your side. You got to also see them in your rear view mirror, because that way you know you have enough distance between both vehicles. Shoulder check to the right, and then signal your right hand signal to turn back into that lane. So the other vehicle knows that you're moving over. On a 2-lane road with 1 lane of traffic in each direction, passing should be performed with extreme caution. So say you're an example where you have traffic going in opposite directions now. Those are the situations you got to give yourself lots and lots of time to make sure you can make that passing safely. When is it illegal to pass another vehicle? You're not allowed to pass when approaching vehicles are too close, right? When you're facing oncoming traffic and you have to move into that lane to pass, when they're too close, you can't do it. You're going to put everybody at risk. When there's a solid yellow line in your side of the center lane, line outside of an urban area, so we talked about those lanes, can't cross over onto solid lanes, only when the line is broken. If there's a sign indicating a no passing zone, so similar to like a no parking sign, this one will actually explicitly say no passing permitted, or it'll have 2 vehicles side by side with the prohibitive sign on it. You're not allowed to pass when you are in a school or playground zone while the restricted speed limits are in effect. So yesterday we talked about school zones and playground zones, and generally the speed limits for those zones are 30 kilometers an hour, so that you have enough time to stop in case you need to stop for a child or pedestrian. So when you're in that school zone and it's during school hours or playground zone in those hours, you cannot pass other vehicles there. So if that vehicle beside you or like a school bus is stopping, you can't pass them. You gotta actually stop and slow down and wait, because there could be passengers coming out of that school bus and intending to cross, but you can't see them through that school bus. So really important. It's legal to pass in those zones when those restrictions are in effect. Another vehicle, you can't pass if there's another vehicle is stopped to allow a pedestrian to cross at an unmarked crosswalk. So say you're not in a school zone, you're just at a normal intersection and there's a crosswalk and the guy beside you stops for the pedestrian, you got to stop too. Even if that pedestrian isn't obstructing your way, you can't pass that vehicle. You want to ensure safety for everybody, including the pedestrian. So another video. So the video talked a little bit about merging. Merging means when you're coming together with other traffic. So it talked a little bit about picking your gap and going into it. This video shows you proper ways to merge with traffic and how the best way to merge. So up here in this area there's either a collision or there's some construction. Those are like pylons. So in this situation, you have 2 lanes that are going down to 1 lane. And this is the proper way to merge with each other safely.
Merging is required when 2 lanes are reduced to 1. In light traffic, a simple lane change to blend in with the flow keeps traffic moving at normal speeds. When there are low traffic volumes combined with high average speeds, an early merge makes sense and drivers should do so. As traffic volumes increase, most drivers continue to believe that the earlier they get out of a blocked lane, the better. This is not the case in moderate to heavy traffic, as it begins to create a backlog and possibly bad feelings, as early mergers believe other drivers are bypassing the line and cutting in right before the lane ends. This is not the most effective or safest way to merge in heavier traffic volumes. The zipper merge is the best way to merge in heavier traffic volumes. The zipper merge is when drivers use both lanes fully until they reach the end of the lane, then alternate into the open lane. This maximizes road space and can reduce congestion by as much as 40%. Best of all, everyone gets to where they're going faster. And who doesn't want that?
So in this video, it was demonstrating the zipper merge where both vehicles, essentially you take turns. A vehicle in the left lane goes, then the vehicle in the right lane goes, then the left lane, and just keep going like that so that everybody's taking turns. And then there's no situation where both vehicles are stopped and trying to figure out who's supposed to go first or who is in the lane first, things like that. Zipper merge is usually the safest way to maneuver through things. And so if you are approaching a construction site or a situation where there could have been a collision and there's emergency vehicles on scene, be prepared to do that zipper merge and look for your gap and make sure that you guys are both taking turns, because merging is actually a shared responsibility. So who has the right of way when you're merging? Answer is no one. Neither the merging vehicle nor the vehicles already on the highway have the right of way. So nobody has the right of way in a merge. It's all vehicles that are coming together and sharing the road together are equally responsible for letting each other in and giving each other enough space to do it safely. This is why caution and courtesy must be exercised by everyone to safely merge into traffic. So be courteous when you see other vehicles approaching. Be mindful that you may need to slow down a little bit or speed up just a little bit. Don't pass the speed limit, but just make sure that you're, or even pulling over to a farther lane. Like if you're in the inside right lane and you know that there's a few vehicles coming in to merge and it's a little congested, you can always pull over to the left lane if it's safe, just to allow a little bit of space for those vehicles coming in. Merging. So here's a situation on highways. Merging is often used for vehicles who are approaching into the highway, also when they're exiting. So merging is intended to keep the flow of traffic going. They don't have stop sign lights that are telling you which way to go. Usually it's that vehicles are in the acceleration lane, like this blue vehicle here in the image. He's in the acceleration lane. He's speeding up to the speed of flow of traffic, and then he's looking for his gap to pull in, and he'll be using his left-hand turning signal to show other vehicles that he's intending to move into that lane. Merging requires that you time your approach and smoothly blend into traffic. This sign up here, that's where the left-hand lane or right-hand lane is ending. And that's when you know, oh, I'm gonna have to do a merge into the flow of traffic. So you may need to adjust your speed, like I said. If you're already on the highway, you may need to adjust your speed. Look ahead or look behind a little bit. Look to the traffic that you're going to be entering into and pick your gap, and then signal to the other drivers so they know that you're moving over. Do not slow down or stop when you're at the end of that acceleration lane. That acceleration lane is meant for you to pick up speed, because usually you're going up to 80 or 100 kilometers an hour. You want to get up to that speed for that flow of traffic. So you don't want to end up stopping, because there could be vehicles behind you going 80 kilometers an hour. And if you stop unexpectedly at the end of that acceleration, you may get rear-ended or get into a collision. So everybody's expecting everyone to go nice and safe. So here's another video about merging, and it's about when you enter and exit off of a highway.
Before your team begins driving in the highway environment, make sure you feel they've mastered all the previous environments. It's also a good idea for them to have had their first highway driving experience with a driver's education instructor prior to your practice drive sessions. Before your team starts driving, review the mechanics of entering and exiting highways. Instruct your new driver that they will need to be able to enter from the acceleration lane and match the speed of the traffic, without causing other cars to slow down or swerve from their lanes. With their speed matched, they need to merge into traffic safely without drifting in and out of the lane. When exiting the highway, The new driver shouldn't slow down until after their car has moved into the exit lane. It's also important not to swerve across lanes to try and make the exit at the last second. If your teen changed lanes flawlessly in the intermediate road environment, your teen is ready to merge onto the highway. The steps are the same as the steps for lane changing. First, you signal your intent to merge. Then, you build up your speed to match the traffic. You check your mirror and your blind spot. And when it's safe, you merge into a gap, leaving a large space cushion. If there is no space to merge and the acceleration lane is ending, continue driving on the shoulder. Knowing this may take some of the pressure off your new driver. Now that you and your new driver are on the highway, start looking for an appropriate exit. Get into the right lane and look for your exit sign. The last exit sign will have the arrow. Signal when the arrow is in sight. Make sure the new driver doesn't brake until they are on the exit ramp. Bring the speed down within the first third of the ramp to the recommended speed. Your teen's internal speedometer may be off when they transition from highway to streets, so stay away from commercial zones if possible. There are a few common errors you'll need to watch for when new drivers practice entering and exiting highways. Teens may not be aware of the car in front of them in the acceleration lane because they're focusing too much on the traffic in the lane beside them. Tell your teen to let the car ahead of them accelerate before they start their own acceleration. This will create an extra space between the cars so both can safely enter the highway. Teens may want to stay in the acceleration lane longer than necessary. They also may not recognize how much space they have to accelerate and merge. With practice, your teen will be able to identify and adjust to the speed of other cars. Some new drivers are not comfortable checking their blind spots with head turns at the higher speeds. Encourage them to do a quick head check. It's a more reliable way to check the blind spots to avoid a crash. When exiting, a common error for teens is signaling too late. Remind them to signal several seconds in advance. Teens may also try to cut across lanes if they fear they will miss their exit. It's far safer to miss the exit and take the next one. And many teens will slow down while still on the highway when approaching their exit. Tell them to wait until they're on the exit ramp to slow down. It's safer and doesn't interrupt the flow of the highway traffic. You'll know when your new driver gets a grasp of entering and exiting highways when they consistently check traffic to evaluate whether the gap is sufficient and their speed has matched the traffic. Yield right-of-way to through traffic. Plan ahead for the exit. And know if they can't safely get to their exit, they can take the next exit.
So in talking about exiting, whenever you're exiting a highway, it was saying the exit lane or the exit ramp. The other terminology that they might see on an exam is a deceleration lane. Deceleration lane means you're going to be slowing your vehicle down to move. And like it said, do not start slowing down while you're on the highway. You only want to start slowing down once you move into that exit lane or that deceleration lane and safely go. Also, if you miss your exit, don't try to stop and reverse and come around. You got vehicles moving at really high speeds. Never want to stop on a highway. Never want to be turning around or reversing. So if you do miss an exit, the best course of action is to take the next exit and then just adjust your route or plan, make arrangements to go back or adjust your route to make sure you get to your destination safely. Never want to be turning around or crossing the meridian or anything like that. So I just need a couple more minutes. I just have like a couple more slides and then we'll be done. You can do your quiz and then you'll be done for the day. So here are some tips on how to merge safely. You definitely saw that through the video. You saw over and over, it talked about getting into the lane, picking up your speed, choosing a good space, and then it talked about a space cushion. So a space cushion is that enough room between vehicles. So if you can see these vehicles here, like A and B, they're nice and tight with each other. They're really close. They're kind of in each other's space. So you would want A to speed up a little bit and then B to slowly come in together. So the space cushion means the space around your vehicle and opposed to other vehicles. You want to have a nice following distance for that space cushion. And space cushions can be determined through the 2-second rule, which I'm going to talk about in another chapter. The other thing for merging is something you might come across are called weave zones. So as you can see here, that a weave zone is where vehicles will be using the same lane to accelerate and decelerate. So there could be vehicles that are entering and exiting at the same time. Again, just like left hands, just like those center left-hand lanes, these are shared use lanes where you can have vehicles exiting and entering at the same time, and they have to cross each other's path, and they have to do it at really high speeds. So weave zones, most of the time you're going to see exits and entering together where you're just on your own. All the traffic's entering together and then separate lane for leaving together. But there's an instance like this where that same lane is being used to exit and enter together. So just be careful. They're called weave zones because vehicles could be weaving in and out of traffic together. And this one is where you definitely want to use that zipper rule. Again, in this situation, merging, they're still merging with each other. Nobody has the right of way. So you don't go to like whoever's going faster gets to go first, or if I was there first, or I was on the primary highway and you were on the secondary, so I get to go first. Those rules of right of way don't apply here. Everybody has to equally show courtesy and let each other in safely. Also, just quickly talking about emergency lane. Tomorrow we're gonna talk more about emergency situations, but here you can see on a primary highway, there's the two main lanes that are used for driving, and then there's the emergency stopping lane is the actual terminology. Another common terminology that you might hear is calling it the shoulder. Lots of people say, hey, pull over to the shoulder, or they're driving in the shoulder, something like that. The actual term for that shoulder area is the emergency stopping lane. And just like it sounds, that emergency stopping lane is only used for emergencies. So if your vehicle breaks down, you get a flat tire, or your trailer's kind of jumping and you need to get back there and readjust it. If there's no like roadside turnout where you can safely, those are the best places to go, because then you can move safely and you have enough room. If you're in a situation where you can't wait to get to that emergency pullout or that roadside pullout, you can use the emergency lane. And what you do is you cannot use those to pass. You shouldn't be using them to for bathroom breaks or anything. You try to plan your route so that you're stopping either at, you're pulling off onto a roadside, or you're going to like a restroom or a campsite, things like that. But this situation, those emergency stopping lanes are only really meant for emergency situations. If you're found, so emergency stopping lanes are found on both sides as well of the primary highways. But you want to move on. If you're traveling on the right, if you're traveling forward, you want to use that right side of the lane for your emergency. You wouldn't want to be on the left side lane because you could have vehicles coming from the opposite direction. So that brings us to chapter 5. Sorry, I got a couple minutes over, but if you guys want to do your quiz now, and then you guys can just go for lunch after. And then when we come back tomorrow, we'll review the questions and go over them together. So I'll copy it, throw it into the chat. Do your questions, or these are pretty quick, only about 4 or 5 questions for this chapter, maybe 6. And then you guys can go for lunch for the day.
Thank you. You were amazing again. Very, very time efficient. Just amazing.
Trying to. It's a little tough. I can start rambling.
Very nice.